Hello and welcome to Celtic Down Under. My name is Laura and I'm joined by Liam as we review the second of the four teams in the final World Cup group for Qatar. It is, of course, South Korea, as we can tell from that shirt. Liam, that's a cracker. That's got to be one of the best at the World Cup, I would say.
Yep, it's definitely one of my personal favourites. Won't say that too loudly in case the wife hears me though. She's not a fan of the Korean team, but
Yeah, fair's fair. It reminds me of an article I was reading the other day, and it was shirts we won't see in the group stage at the World Cup. So I didn't know this, but apparently strangely enough, part of the marketing ploy has been that most teams will try and stick to their home shirts for the majority of the group stage where possible. Meaning that somebody's looked ahead at the potential for any of them to wear their away strip during the group stage, and some crackers were saying that they wouldn't appear at the group stage. That Korean one, the Mexico away shirt that I talked about so passionately when we reviewed Mexico, and many others. And the panic's in you as a shirt enthusiast that they get knocked out before they have a chance to wear it.
Well, this Germany one behind me is a beauty as well, but there's a good chance that won't get an airing now after what happened the other night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not that most people will care about it, but I know that we do.
Aye. Argentina have got an absolutely cracking purple away shirt as well. It's well worth checking out.
Yes, I do love that one as well. Hopefully they get a chance to out that, because I'm not really caring about Saudi Arabia's away shirt, put it that way. But nevertheless, we will crack on with our review of South Korea. I mean, I think everybody knows where the star player is for South Korea, but nevertheless, we will look at the entire squad just to see who we're dealing with. Not an awful lot of common names there. Kim's or well-known names, certainly in the Western world of football. Kim Sung-yu of Al Shabab, Jo Hyun Woo of Ulsan Hyundai, and Song Bum Kyun of Yeonbuk Hyundai Motors. It's not clear of the three of those who's going to be the starter. Even when you look at some of the review, it says Kim Sung-yu should be the first choice, but there is potential that either of the other two goalkeepers could make it in. So it's not going to be where it's made or broken for South Korea, though.
No, I tell you what, though, it was a commentator's nightmare, that game last night, because Korea's goalkeeper and their back four were all called Kim.
Yeah,
That was but yeah, Kim is actually the one of the three goalkeepers that I've seen in action, because I saw him play in a World Cup warm-up game fairly recently, and he looked solid, not outstanding, but not particularly error-prone either. In recent years, Korea, Japan, and indeed most of the Asian area countries have really stepped up their goalkeeping game. It used to be an area where they had notable weaknesses, but they're definitely getting better in that regard.
Yeah, and here's hoping that they can do, because obviously they've managed to shut out Portugal in the first match, but there's considerable Uruguay, sorry. Oh my god, it's been a long time. It's been a long road.
I'm the one that's got drugs in my system. What's your excuse?
They've managed to shut out Uruguay, but they've got the considerable firepower of Portugal and the goal threat of Ghana that we've already seen to try and keep out as well. So let's hope they can do that for the good of anybody who's supporting South Korea anyway. Really, the only high-profile name there in terms of in the European game anyway is Kim Min-jae of Napoli. Most of the other players in that defence are still based in Asia. Any of those who stand out to you, given your slightly better knowledge of Asian football than mine?
Well, I've seen Kwon of Gamba Osaka a couple of times, and he's decent. Good ball winning defender, likes to get forward as well when he can. It's on one hand though, it's with Korea you might notice something similar to what we've seen with the likes of Saudi Arabia, in that being largely based in the same league could actually be beneficial to the team dynamic, as it gives them more of a sort of a club team feel to them.
Well,
And
this was a thing I was going to ask you. As an enthusiast of Japanese football and probably by proxy to some extent Asian football, do you see this as an opportunity with a squad like this to be a really good advert for Korean football and the quality of it? Because obviously, if they've got a defence that's mostly made up of people from Korea or surrounding Asian countries, if they do well in shutting out teams with a lot of European-based players, it's going to do a lot for the reputation of the league, you would have thought.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think people are waking up now to the J League, just how good it is. But the K League is one that is still kind of flying under the radar. Mostly because, I think, largely because of, like, how should I say, a kind of a more, I'm trying to think of a diplomatic way to put this, a more kind of nativist attitude with a lot of the teams in Korea. You don't have so many foreigners playing in Korea.
Right.
So if there's less foreigners, that translates into less of an international profile.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas the J League,
here's a good way of putting it. They have a higher proportion of domestically trained players. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but there's also on top of that a reluctance to bring in foreign players.
Right. Okay.
Because they believe that, and it's like, I think in a football sense, it's actually a good thing because they believe that they have a duty to produce good players for the national team. So
listen, I personally don't have a problem with a league taking that approach. I don't think it's xenophobic or racist or whatever way you want to put it, to say, no, we want to build this league on the back of a strong core of players from our country for the good of football in this country and for the good of the national team. I don't personally see that as a problem if you're clear about your intentions in that way.
No, and the thing is with the Korean teams, it's not like they'll say, "Oh, no foreigners." It's nothing like that. Maybe I've worded it badly, but it's just like if they have a choice between bringing in a young guy from Australia or having a young Korean player who's about the same ability, they'll go with the Korean player because that's better for the national team in the long run.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I actually think more national teams and more leagues would do better for having that kind of attitude, I think. But we'll see. Looking at the midfield, slightly more European based there, but again not for very high profile teams certainly. But Young Woo Young of Al Sadd, Na Sang Ho of Seoul, Paik Sung Ho of Yeonbuk Hyundai Motors again, Son Young Ho, Song Min Kyu, Kwon Chang Hoon, Lee Jae-sang, Hwang In-byum, and Lee Kang-in. I apologise to any Korean viewers if I have absolutely butchered the way of pronouncing that, but I do try my best. Again, Liam, not a lot of high-profile names there, certainly for an ignorant Western football fan as I am, but who there for you is standing out in that lineup?
Well, I have seen Olympiacos a couple of times, and Hwang is decent. He's a good kind of one of those guys that likes to kind of sit a wee bit deeper and pick out a pass. Sort of an Aaron Moy type. For Celtic fans. He's good, and he's been in Europe for a while, so he kind of has a bit more savvy about him than maybe some of the domestic Korean players would have. And I think that's a good, there's a good balance to that midfield because they've got, the majority of them are playing in Korea, but you've got some European and I think Al Sadd, I think they're Saudi Arabian. So there's a good international flavour there that kind of adds a bit more sort of a street smarts to the team, if you like.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair to say. And just because you brought him up, I just want to briefly break from looking at this to say, who'd have thought at the beginning of 2022 we'd be delighting ourselves with the fact that Aaron Moy kept Antoine Griezmann in his back pocket for large swathes of that game against France, even if it doesn't turn out fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see what happens when France play Denmark because I'm not sure how much of that game was down to Australia defending really well or France being poorer than we expected, even though they ultimately scored 4 goals.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting one because they seem to have, I don't know, coming up against France looks like a bit of an unpredictable one for me because they've got certain players doing roles that you would never have thought they would be doing. Griezmann being one of them. I think he played about 4 different positions during the match, and
Yeah.
they ranged from just behind the strikers to just in front of the defence and everywhere in between. So it'll be interesting to see. But moving back to South Korea and on to the strike force, there's your star man there. It's obviously Song Hyun-min of Tottenham Hotspur, but he's got Hwang Hee-chan, another well-known player from Wolverhampton Wanderers with a lot of power and great finishing. Hwang Eo of Olympiacos again, Cho Yu-sing of Yeonbuk Hyundai Motors, and Yong Woo-young of Freiburg. Most of this chat's going to be based around Song Hyun-min. I'm going to be completely honest here and say this is where, and I don't want to accuse anybody of anything that they don't rightly deserve, but I think if Song Hyun-min isn't Asian, he gets a lot more credit than he does currently.
And, absolutely.
And I don't understand why in the summer you've got his strike partner Harry Kane getting linked with moves here, there and everywhere, and you never hear about him getting linked with a move to a bigger club than Tottenham. I don't understand it.
Well, the funny thing is, if you look at both of them and their international teams, now, Harry Kane scores a lot of goals for England, but a lot of them are penalties, if you look at the actual stats, right?
Absolutely.
And I don't think I don't think him or Son are as effective when they're not playing together. Because Son plays more of he actually was playing more like a winger last night than a striker.
Yeah.
And although he's obviously very good in that role as well, I think you lose something there by not giving him the kind of free run. Because when they play for Tottenham, Kane is essentially the target man, and Son is the one who kind of has a bit of trickery to make things happen.
Why do you think he doesn't get that freedom in the Korea national team? Because with all due respect to the other players, and even with my limited knowledge of them, I can't see certainly a player in that forward line or another player I can think of in that entire squad who's even near his level. So why he wouldn't be considered the Messi of South Korea or the Ronaldo of South Korea in that sense, and be given the freedom to do what he wants, I'm not entirely sure. Have you got any insight into why that might be the case?
It's a question of mentality. One of the funny things is for all their quite, shall we say, confrontational history, the Japanese and the Koreans have quite a similar mindset when it comes to team sports. They favour the team dynamic above all else. Son is probably the Asian Messi, like you say, but he doesn't have the ego to walk up to the Korean national team and say, right, I'm playing here, you build the team around me. No. It's like, boss, where do you want me? That's their attitude. And it's an attitude that has served them well. Korea are a country that since 2002, when a lot of people said, oh, it was because of the referees, whatever, maybe they got a bit of help in 2002. I don't know, right? But since then, they've accredited themselves well at every World Cup they've played in since.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up. They obviously got that famous semi-final run in 2002, and I remember at the time, even I was a teenager at the time, thinking, oh, they've come out of nowhere. And they certainly did in terms of getting to a semi-final. But when you look at that, I mean, they've consistently qualified for 4 World Cups before that. And I am one of these people who thinks, okay, they've gone out at the group stage, but to consistently qualify for World Cups in that sense is no mean feat. And then obviously since that semi-final run, they've continued. That's consecutive World Cups since '86. You'll not find many teams that have managed to do that. Certainly from their part of the world as well. They got group stage again in Germany, round of 16 in 2010 in South Africa, and 2 more group stage finishes in Brazil and Russia. So we've talked before on these videos about teams who you expect to be at the World Cup. I'm going to be honest, South Korea are not a team I expect to see at the World Cup. After looking at that, I'm not sure why.
They're a team that have been at every World Cup that I've ever watched. That's the funny thing. Fun fact, actually, a bit of random trivia here. Do you know why South Korea wear red, despite the fact it's not the predominant colour of their national flag?
Well, I just presumed they aesthetically thought it was the nicest of the colours on their flag, but
No. To use a Scottish phrase here, it was essentially a get it up you to Japan. Before the Second World War, when Korea was essentially a part of Japan or the Japanese Empire, the Japanese national team wore red because that was the color of the rising sun on the flag, right? So when obviously Japan lost the war, Korea regained their independence. The Korean national team were obviously they got their act together in terms of playing international football again much quicker than Japan did, and they adopted red shirts because technically that was the shirt they'd worn before, even though they'd been playing as Japan.
Right.
It was so the one country essentially became two separate countries at that point. And so they carried on, if you like, the red jerseys, which forced Japan to adopt the blue jerseys.
Yeah.
So it was actually a bit of a political manoeuvring. And those red shirts carry a lot of pride with Koreans because it's a reminder of the battle they had to fight for their independence.
That's interesting. Is it so? Why then did that inform or did that force Japan into the blue shirts, or was there another reason for that?
Japan wore white shirts for a while. Then they adopted the blue, I think, round about the time of the '64 Olympics, if I remember correctly.
Right. Okay.
And they've been the samurai blue ever since then.
Yeah. No, that's a listen. There is no doubt, I think, off the back of this, that we are not going to end up doing some sort of kit podcast because I could talk about it for years and years. Honestly, it's great. But with that in mind, we will get back to the current day and just close out with a look at the remaining fixtures for South Korea and where they sit and where they are potentially going to go from this World Cup. I don't think I've pulled it up. Haven't. Right, hang on. We'll need to waffle until I pull it up.
Right.
Listen. I think South Korea are one of those teams where, again, a bit like Uruguay when we talked about them, they're one of those teams that I think you always think they'll not do much, but you wouldn't want them in your group.
Yeah, they're not an easy team. They're a team that like to produce shocks at the World Cup, and when they do, it's usually at a much bigger team's expense. So play them at your peril. Like I say, I'm interested to see how they fare in the next game against Ghana.
Yeah.
And also, they're probably still going to need something from the Portugal game to get through, even if they do beat Ghana. So, no, I certainly don't think Korea are out of it yet. They got a very well-earned point from Uruguay, who I think are the second best team in this group. So it's all to play for, and I for one hope they get through because it's good for the profile of Asian football, and I enjoy watching Korea play.
Yeah, I think what's clear from the opening couple of matches, you've obviously had a stalemate draw between Korea and Uruguay. You've had Portugal eke out a result over Ghana when it so easily could have gone another way. I would say probably looking back on it, we've had other groups where there's been a clear winner and then picking second place is very difficult. In terms of this group, this is probably about the most wide open group across the four teams, I would say.
Yeah, because the fact that Portugal only just beat Ghana last night says to me that they're not this all-conquering force that they were made out to be before the tournament. You know?
Yeah. So it's going to be certainly it's going to leave a lot of drama if they're going to be playing all of their games last in the fixture roundup. You'll be getting to the last game, that Korea versus Portugal match and Ghana versus Uruguay, potentially with both matches meaning something in terms of qualification. So it's going to be fantastic to see. With that said, I think we've said everything that we want to say. Everything. That's an East Coast pronunciation. I don't know what I've done there. Anyway,
I didn't ken what you're on about there. Then.
I've been working in the East Coast far too long, I think. But no, that's it for South Korea. I certainly hope that they do well.
Yeah.
Again, keep your voice down, Liam, but I'm sure you hope they do well as well.
No, I do. I enjoy watching Korea, and I do wish them all the best, except when they play Japan.
Absolutely. With that said, we will leave it there. We will be covering Portugal next. A look at some wee guy called Ronaldo. And we will see you then. Liam, thank you very much.
Thank you.